All right, what's up, everybody? This is your boy, Big Brother A. Happy Friday. The Carolina Frat House podcast is back. We took a little break after the draft. We broke down all the picks and reactions, grades, and what we thought. And now we have the 2026 schedule release. All right, came out last night, and I just wanted to go over that and what we could expect or what we can analyze from the schedule and see like how we think it's going to play out for us. So before we get into that, guys, yeah, just it's been been a great couple weeks since the draft. Looking at our players, looking at just rookie camp. Team seems solid. Okay, the Panthers team seems solid. So it's going to be a real exciting period. And just one thing to think, guys. Spring is summer's coming up. Just make sure you enjoy yourselves. All right, that's number one thing. Make sure you enjoy yourselves this summer because when football season hit, it's gonna be a real should be a real exciting season. All right, a lot of players and coaches. This is like a must win season for them. So not just and like I said, not just with the Panthers. Okay, Panthers of course, but just a lot of teams have it's a must win season. So this is going to be really exciting. Okay, really exciting season coming up. I'm excited. All right, so let's go over to our schedule. All right, so I have this in frat house layout, but a lot of things to take a note. But overall, I think this is a really good schedule for us. Okay, I'm really excited about this schedule. So let's talk about the number one thing. We have 3 primetime games. Okay, including a Sunday night football game. All right, we have not had a Sunday night football game since 2016. Okay, that game was where we got our asses whooped by the Seahawks. In 2016, linebacker Cam Newton he started the game benched because he did not wear a tie. All right, Dave Gettleman enforced that and benched Cam Newton, not wearing a tie. Dave Gettleman also destroyed the Super Bowl team as soon as he added a few pieces. All right, the year before. So he completely dismantled the team. Another addition is that year is considered the Vernon Butler draft. Okay, horrible. We had a horrible draft that year. So that year was just a beginning of a downfall that we've been going on for a long time. That's the last time we had a Sunday night football game, and now we have one this year. All right. So looking at the schedule, we have one week 4 against the Detroit Lions. All right, Detroit Lions, good team. Had a they've been had a win have had winning seasons for the past couple years. Should be a good game, and we have that game at home. So really good, really good. We're getting a good bit more of a national exposure, all right, which is always good. All right, so we have that. We have a Thursday night game, of course, and a Monday night game against the Bucks. So 3 primetime games. If we're doing well, those games. I'm sure Panther fans go out and support those games. I'm excited. Like I didn't even realize it been that long since we had a Sunday night football game. Then again, I'm used to checking out after week 3 or 4 with the Panthers. So I'm not surprised either. Didn't realize it was that long, but I'm not surprised either. as I mentioned, Dave Gettleman. That was the last time we had one. Was the beginning of when Dave Gettleman went crazy and destroyed the Panthers, destroyed the Super Bowl team he inherited, and we really have not recovered since. All right, we're still trying to recover from that. So, 3 primetime games. All right. Now, looking, we also have, I might say 4 if you count the Hall of Fame game. We are playing in that game against the Cardinals. Let's say 4. Let me edit that. But let's say 4 primetime games. I'm gonna go ahead and count the Hall of Fame preseason game. All right, so we get to see our Panthers early. All right, which is great because we got a Panther going into the Hall of Fame. Another Panther, Luke Kuechly. All right, one of my favorite players. Right, I have his jersey. I didn't, the funny thing is I did not expect him to be one of my favorite players because I love John Beeson. Real big fan of John Beeson, but Luke Kuechly, he came in after John Beeson had the bad Achilles injury, and he came in and just took over, man. He's a huge fan favorite. For some reason, I was hoping when we went to the Super Bowl that we would win and he would get the Super Bowl MVP. That's how much I liked Luke Kuechly. So, real proud of him. He got in. He should have been first ballot, but, he got in second round. Just real proud of him. So, 4 primetime games. All right. And before we look, we looking at our schedule, the first 4 games is pretty good. Even though, we get an early bye week, and I'm going to discuss that a little bit more. But the first 4 games, we start the game off against Chicago Bears. And, the story is going to be, we made the trade for Bryce with the Bears. The Bears were able to use that to get Caleb Williams. They had DJ Moore. He just left this past offseason to go to the Bills. But they were able to basically stock up their team with that trade. So it's basically Bryce Young versus Caleb Williams. All right. We traded our first for Bryce Young. And we get to show whether that was the right move or not at home. All right. It's like year 4. For Bryce, year 3 for Caleb Williams. They were in the playoffs. The Bears were in the playoffs last year. We were as well. We sort of lucked our way in. Okay, our record was 8-9, but we lucked our way in. And they're both young quarterbacks. We want to see if these guys take the next step, especially for us, Bryce. So we have that. That's week 1, real big game, and we got it at home. Okay, we got the Falcons and Cleveland next. Bryce always plays well against the Falcons. Cleveland, they still have a good defense, but they're still looking for a quarterback. So, those 2 very winnable games. And then the primetime game against the Lions at home. So, one thing I really like is our first 4 games, our big games are both home games for the first 4 weeks. All right? So, the tough games, we got those games at home, which, should increase our likelihood of winning. Also, we have the Falcons in there. So, Bryce always plays well, or pretty much plays well against the Falcons. I'm not going to say always. But lately he's been playing extremely well against the Falcons. And that should be interesting because, they want revenge. All right. Falcons, Bryce broke, a passing record against them. And, they... It's probably the same like how we felt when Julio Jones broke the receiving record against us. Like, no, we want revenge next season. So, should be real interesting lineup. All right. And then, like I said, early bye week. Now, early bye week, I think is, is not good for the team necessarily. You sort of want the bye week in the week during, maybe like, during the middle of the schedule. maybe like around week 8, week 9. That way, you have the rest is probably more needed then. But I don't think it's necessarily bad. But I do think it is bad for Bryce Young and Dave Canales. Okay, just those two specifically. Why is it bad for those two? All right. Bryce, he has to play well. All right. These 4 games, he have to play well. All right. We have to play well. If Bryce struggles, which, the Panthers have done under him every year he has played, okay? Every year he has been a Panthers quarterback, we have struggled and started off slow to begin the season. All right, just last year, we thought he was done. Right? Just last year, we thought he was done. Okay? It's like, okay, the experiment is over. Bryce is just not going to work out for us. And he was able to bounce back during the later part of the season. But if we struggle like that these first 4 games, let's say we go 0-4. Okay, 1 or 3 or 0-4. But let's say we go 0-4 and Bryce plays the same way he did. Let me look up his stats. Those first couple games last year. Okay, let's look up the stats. So last year, all right, we went 1-3. Okay, Bryce, 154 yards first game, 2 interceptions. All right, then he had a good game against the Cardinals. We lost that. Good game against the Cardinals, 328 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. All right, then back-to-back games under 150 yards passing with the Falcons and Patriots. We won against the Falcons. Even though he didn't pass much, we dominated that game, but we lost against the Patriots. All right, but, we did not start off well. All right? If we do that again, if we have those same type of stat lines where, Bryce is barely passing over 150 yards, his touchdowns is matching. He has more interceptions than touchdowns, or he's matching his touchdown total. They're gonna be called to bench him. All right. So if the bye week was later, Bryce would have more leeway to maybe catch up, or up his production during the middle of the season. Let's say if the bye week was like by week 8. But the bye week being week 5, if we struggle those first 4 games, which Bryce has shown every year since he's been our quarterback. Every year since he's been our quarterback, we've started off slow. Bryce will get benched during the bye week. That's if he does not progress and takes the next step as a starting quarterback. All right? He doesn't even have to be elite. He just has to show he's capable of being a good starting quarterback. I saw a question on Reddit. They were posting the stats of Jalen Hurts. And they said, what if Bryce Young has these stats? Would you be happy? And if I remember correctly, it was 3,500 passing, maybe 500 yards rushing, a total of 30 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. I said we would probably extend Bryce immediately. As soon as it's time to extend him, we would extend him if Bryce Young had those stats. All right? Now, the Eagles, I understand they expected a whole lot more since they're stacked and they're just coming off a Super Bowl win. All right? If Bryce had those stats, we would extend him immediately. Okay, so that's what we're going to need. That's what he's going to need. He's going to need to really show out in preseason, okay? We've been trying to hide hide our team, not taking preseason seriously. We can't do that this year. And I was saying, Dave, this is bad for Dave Canales as well. I can see a scenario where Dave Canales is fired during the bye week. All right? This is possible. This happened under Matt Rule. Okay, remember Matt Rule? Mr. Took Jay-Z 7 years. Okay, Matt Rule was fired in the middle of the season during his 3rd year because he couldn't show anything. The team didn't progress under him. The same could happen to Dave Canales. Dave Canales is not calling offense. Right? That was sort of played off like, we're gonna that's gonna help our team overall. Remember the whole reason we hired an offensive head coach is we wanted a guy calling the plays so he could stay with the team. Okay, if Brad Isnick is calling the plays and we succeed, he's going to be gone, which is what we don't want. That was the whole purpose of signing Dave Canales as an offensive head coach, is we don't want a great play caller to leave the team immediately. If we do well, Brad is going to be gone. All right, somebody's going to pick him up as a head coach. So the way I looked at it more so is, hey, Dave Canales, this is, we're setting it up to let you go if you struggle early. All right, this is better for the team, but we're also setting it up to be able to let you go. So, we cannot have a slow start. Right? Looking at these teams, we cannot leave. We cannot be under 2-2. All right? I think if we're 1-3, we might be able not to fire someone, but I think the calls will still be extremely high because after the bye, we got the Eagles. All right? We got the Eagles, we got the Bucks, and we got Green Bay. All right? Tough teams. All tough teams. So, and, even just going in the middle of the week, middle of the schedule, we got Denver. All right? Denver was 14-3. We got the Saints. The Saints always play us hard. All right? The first Saints game is in New Orleans. We got Baltimore. All right, Baltimore struggled, but they have Lamar Jackson. They're going to be hungry and ready to rebound. All right, Lamar Jackson was hurt last year. They still got King Henry. They still got Lamar Jackson on offense. They still got some players they're hoping to rebound on defense. That the middle of the schedule is tough. All right, that's the toughest part of our schedule, the middle of the schedule. All right, we got first place schedule, so we got a lot of teams that went 11-6 and above, was first and second in their division. All right, we cannot afford to start the season off 1-3. So what will we do? If Bryce struggles, do you bench him and put in Kenny Pickett? Okay, you probably, Kenny Pickett, I don't think he's going to lead us to a winning season. That, to me, that shows why you needed to pick up a backup with potential. Okay? A backup with potential. Just think about it. So I think this is bad for both. And like I said, I believe Canales will go before Bryce. I think Bryce, if we struggle, I think Tepper would fire Canales and we would just look to replace Bryce at the end of the season. I think they like Bryce that much. I think Bryce has that much power with the Panthers. Right? I think he could be still benched, but he will stay on the team. and I don't even think he would be totally benched. I think they would just fire Canales, have this other Brad Isnick, Vero, whoever else, try to work something out with Bryce before giving up completely. So that early bye week, it's a lot of pressure on the team, the main two players, Canales and Bryce Young. Um, but looking at the end of the schedule, if we do well, okay, assuming we do well, we're in a position to start off strong and end strong. Okay, when you look at the last 5 games, 4 of them are home games. All right, so the Saints, home. Bengals got their game at home. The Steelers, we got that in Pittsburgh as away, but then we got the Seahawks and Falcons at home. All right, so all those games are home games. 4 of those 5 are home games. So we can end strong. There's some tough teams, especially the Seahawks. Okay, the Seahawks whooped our asses, the worst out of all teams last year, and they just won the Super Bowl. Okay, they can definitely repeat an ass whooping on us. All right, we could not do anything on the Seahawks. I believe Bryce had like barely 100 yards passing against the Seahawks last year. But if we want to show we're different and we're a better team, hey, we got that. We got them in Carolina. Maybe that'll give us a better chance to compete and win that game. All right, so schedule, is it's like top and bottom heavy. Okay, the rough part in the middle could get ugly real fast. Betting. When you look at the bettors, I think they're predicting us to have a record of around like 6-11. Not very good. I believe worse in our division, and it's possible. All right, it's possible. If you look at our history, where we struggle to start well, and then the middle of our schedule, there's a good chance we can be like 2-8. Right, very good chance we can end up 2-8, something like that. Let's say we end up 1-3, and the bye comes, and then you look at our next, let's see, 7 games, 6-7 games, and we lose to the Saints, Eagles, Packers, and split with the Buccaneers, and lose to the Broncos. That's an extra 5 losses. And you somehow win maybe against Baltimore or one of these other games. That's 2-8. That's very feasible, very possible. All right, very possible. If we're 2-8 near the middle of the season, are you feeling good about the Panthers? No, you're thinking, hey, at the end of this season, Canales is gone. I might want him gone, or I might want to see what he's gonna do with another quarterback. Might want to do that. Okay, I actually would prefer that, but I don't think Tepper wants that from Canales. Okay, but you definitely, if we're 2-8, I'm pretty sure Bryce stats aren't going to be looking great if we're 2-8. So you're probably looking like, hey, all right, we suck this year. We're going to draft a quarterback to lead the team next year. Now, how could it go well? This is how it could go well. Let's say we go 3-1 going into the bye week. 3-1, we split a lot of these tough games in the middle. All right, so we go like 3-3. So let's say that's 6-4, and then we end off strong. End off strong with four wins. We can end it off. A lot of home games, the rest of those games, we can end it off with 4 or 5 wins. All right, so that's like what, 10-11, 10-7, 11-6. That's possible. All right. We're just going to have to show something we've never shown before, which is we're going to have to start off great. Got to start off hungry. And we'll know, okay? When we watch the Hall of Fame game, when we watch the Bills, the preseason game against the Bills, if we go into those preseason games looking horrible as we have been doing, that'll be an early indication that we will probably not have a good season. Okay, it's same old, same old. I would look closely at that bye week because we're probably going to start off slow and something's going to have to change. All right, we got this national attention. That would be a bad preseason Hall of Fame preseason game and a bad Sunday night football game against the Lions. Possibly. How do you think that's going to make us look? Something would have to change during that bye week. So, but I'm excited. Like I said, I'm excited because it puts the pressure on our team. And I believe with that pressure, we could be great. It could turn us into a great team. Could teach us like, hey, you know what? We actually started to take preseason more importantly. We started to take the earlier part of our season more importantly. Now let's start doing that from now on instead of lollygagging. All right, we've been doing this slack preseason thing since Tepper purchased the team. All right, with Matt Rule, we were horrible in preseason. We didn't take it important. We was horrible in practice. All right, the brief moment, Frank Wright, we was horrible in preseason. All right, we was horrible at the beginning. All right, so this is a consistent thing under David Tepper. Is that something he's preaching to our team and staff? Letting his opinion know, hey, do not take this preseason important. Who knows? But it's gonna have to change. All right, it's gonna have to change. So yeah, that's the outlook. For the season. I'm actually try to go to a couple of these games. Maybe two. I'm gonna have to really look at the schedule. But I'm excited. I'm a competitive guy. I like the potential for it to be either great or awful. I don't want I'm tired of 8 and 9 mediocre possibility. No, I want it to be either we come out 11-6 or we suck and end up 3-14. I want to know for sure. Hey, listen, hey, I told you so. Bryce is not the guy. Dave Canales probably isn't the head coach for us. I'm ready to move on. Or, hey, both these guys have put it together. I believe in Bryce and Dave Canales. All right. And I look forward to the future and look forward to them together in the future. It's either or. So, guys, tell me what you think. All right. What game, look at this, look at our schedule. What game are you really focused on, are excited for? Which game do you really want to see? Out of all of these games, to me, it's the Sunday night football game. That fourth game, week 4. That's my number one game. All right. I might actually try to make that game. That's the game I'm circling because it's right before the bye week. We're either, doing well at the beginning of the season or horrible. And I feel like that game is going to insinuate how we're doing at the beginning of the season. Either we're doing horrible and the Lions whoop our ass, or we're doing well and we might manage to beat the Lions. I want to see how that, that's the game I'm circling. But you guys, you tell me, which game are you focusing on the most? All right, and the reason why, put it in the comments below, and that's it. That's just what I want to talk about. I'm gonna get one of my friends over so we could talk more about the upcoming season and some of the games, and some of the other teams, and maybe some input from that side. But yeah, that's all I just want to talk about. So guys, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll have more content coming to you. So. Peace.